An FBI report that 300 refugees are subjects of terror investigations inside the United States. This, as a report says, deaths from terrorism increased by 80% from last year. Also, the intensity of terrorism also increased, with the number of countries suffering more than 500 deaths from terrorist acts more than doubling. But attorneys against the administration today argued that refugees pose no threat. Listen.
The government points in its executive order to really only three things. They point to 2 people from Iraq who committed crimes, but Iraq is now exempt from the executive order, and someone from Somalia who came here as a refugee when he was 2 years old and committed crimes when he grew up, but the executive order exempts.
Former presidential candidate and former Governor Mike Huckabee is with me now. Governor, okay, sir, who's right, the FBI or the attorneys against the administration?
Well, that's an easy call. I mean, you have to trust that the people who are doing investigations of the refugees and actually have information and aren't just out there making political statements but are trying to protect Americans, we might want to listen to them. And that's what all of this has been about. The judges and the lawyers who are arguing against what the president has tried to put in place, which is, as correctly stated a moment ago, it is not a ban. You know, let's face it, those judges and lawyers, they don't have a clue about national security. That's not their area. And under the law, they need to trust the executive branch, who does have both the constitutional and statutory authority to deal with this.
Well, that's right. It's not a ban. It's a temporary pause, a 90-day pause. The administration's attorney arguing today a ruling against the president would severely limit his ability to protect Americans. Listen to this.
If you really take their argument seriously, I think they're committed to the view that under 1182F, even if the president got actionable intelligence tomorrow that, let's say, a Libyan national were attempting to enter the country, but the president didn't know his identity, to commit some terrorist act, they'd say, well, the president can't suspend entry of all Libyan nationals for some short period of time because that's a nationality-based distinction. I think that would raise serious constitutional concerns, and so courts have never read the statutes to conflict in that way.
Well, is this right, Governor? Does this make us less safe?
It absolutely does. And what makes this so frightening is that the judges are really trying to argue a policy question which is not their purview. The only thing that they have in front of them is whether or not the president has the legal authority. They don't have to agree with it. They can think his policy is plain nuts, and they can say it is. But what they cannot do is take his power and authority away from him just because they don't happen to agree with it. That upsets the balance of power. It upsets the whole notion of separation of powers, and you can't have the judicial branch acting like it's a super branch of government. That's no longer a check and balance. That's where one branch now has assumed a power that the Constitution never gave it, taking away the power of the executive branch, which the Constitution clearly did give it. That's what's really disturbing.
Well, the Trump administration attorney says Reagan and Carter did the exact same thing. Governor, take a listen.
Unless you say that the president is disabled, every president, permanently, from making any nationality-based distinctions under 1182F, Reagan with the Cubans or Carter with the Iranians, unless you take that road, I don't think there's any way to read the statutes that could provide the basis for the injunction we have here.
So is the president being treated unfairly, and why?
Well, he is being treated unfairly. The why is pretty obvious, because there's some people that still cannot accept the fact that whether they like it or not, he took the oath of office, he is the president, Hillary isn't the president, and these judges aren't the president. I'm so frustrated in this notion, and it's a totally false and dangerous notion of judicial supremacy, that some unelected black robe lawyer sitting in a courtroom in Washington State or Hawaii or anywhere can usurp the duly elected president of the United States because he just doesn't like what Trump said during the campaign. Jerry, let's all step back and say that scares the daylights out of us, because it ought to. We cannot let that sort of runaway activist judiciary take root in this country. It destroys everything that we have in terms of what we have as a system of checks and balances, and they're totally out of balance with judges who are off the rails like these.